You are live.
All right, we're going to open this public hearing and then close this public hearing, but the public will be able to make comments through May 22nd, Friday, May the 22nd. And how are they making those comments again?
Can the people, staff hear us on Zoom? No? Can the staff hear us on Zoom?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay.
It's not great, but.
Yeah, there's like a feedback on it.
It's because we're now feeding the audio off the camera in the back of the room, so we're probably getting an echo. And you guys are picking up with the big large mic that's here, so it's, yeah.
We'll make do, that's all right.
Is this any better?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, so, for the public comment portion, until May 22nd, we'll have a link on our website. We'll also put it on our Facebook page, for folks to be able to provide comments. We have the budget is already on the website, for people to download and review if they so choose. And that'll be, again, through May 22nd. What we'll do is we'll take all the comments for each of the 4 items and public, or put them together for council for the June 2nd council meeting.
all right, so I'm going to officially open the public hearing for the budget amendment for fiscal year 2019-2020, with the understanding that people will be able to comment through our website up through Friday, May the 22nd. And then I will subsequently close that public hearing. And we will move from there to item 8B, proposed water utility service rates.
Okay, so as part of the requirements for the Brookmont VDH funded project, we agreed to increase water rates 3% a year for, I want to say 3 years. And it wasn't a big deal because we had committed to the Davenport study's recommendations, which varied between 3% and 4% a year for 5 years. Well, this year we've chosen to push the pause button on the Davenport study recommendations, but we can't push the pause button on the Brookmont requirements. So we do need to have a public hearing for a proposed 3% increase for water rates. I'll reiterate, we are not doing anything to sewer rates this year, but we do have to do tonight for the 3% water rates. We'll also have the same requirements or allowances for public comments until May 22nd for this.
That being said, I will officially open the public hearing for the proposed water utility service rates. And again, the public can comment on the website through Friday, May the 22nd. And I will close that public hearing. We will move on to item 8C, proposed residential garbage rates.
I have a question first.
Sure.
Does that mean now that since you put a pause on the regular water rates, after the Brookmont, we will go back and raise again?
I don't think so. I think this really, yeah, we couldn't push the pause button because of the VDH requirements. But on the sewer side, it may be that the revenues work out themselves anyway. I think we need to look at it, but I don't know that we'll need to. We would have been year 4 of 5 this year of that. This would have been year 5.
Yeah.
So we can look at it halfway through the fiscal year and see what the revenues look like. But at this point, I think we're going to continue as we are now.
Just a reminder for everybody, because they are complaining about the audio now that we're on the backup equipment, it's really important that we have the mic real close to our mouths so we're loud, and you can move it if you need to.
Thank you, Mr. So item 8C, proposed residential garbage rates. We're following the lead of the Public Service Authority. As you know, the town doesn't collect the refuse, but we do bill for the refuse collections. That we, as part of that billing, we do retain 5% of what's collected. but the rest goes to the PSA, with the PSA proposing a $1 increase in the monthly fees, we needed to follow suit. Their public hearing isn't until May 11th, but I'll have an idea of what their final decision is going to be before the June 2nd council meeting, so that you can take appropriate action. Again, same public hearing process to go through and allow citizen comments through May 22nd.
All right, so I will officially open the public hearing for the proposed residential garbage rates increase. And I will also officially close that public hearing.
Now, what happens if the PSA has a different version of what we approved tonight?
We will not be approving anything tonight, and we will not be approving anything until they've taken their action. We know what they're going to be doing. They may or may not end up raising the rates. They've also advertised for 5% water and 5% sewer, in addition to the refuse rates.
But if the PSA does not raise rates,
We will not.
we won't.
We will not raise
If
rates.
they raise it, the most that they're saying it could go up would be $1. So if they say raise it 50 cents, then we'll only raise ours 50 cents so that we can pay them what they're charging.
Yes, sir. We'll follow suit with what the PSA does. But this,
Oh, I'm sorry. When will we have that information? Do you know?
I was told I would have it before the June 2nd, but I wasn't given an actual date. Their public hearing is the 11th. They'll take action, official action, the week after our June 2nd meeting. But I was assured that we would have an understanding where they're going before our council meeting. That's about as good as I can get right now.
Thank you.
All right, that will move us to item 8D, public hearing for the proposed budget for fiscal year 2020-2021.
Yeah, I was speaking with the mayor earlier this evening about the budget for next year and the normal public hearing process. Normally, I would have had a 20 slide PowerPoint prepared for the public and everything fancy, but with the way we have to do meetings these days, that wasn't necessary or an option. But what we have done is said several times is putting this on the website and actually trying to get the word out on the draft budget. We've had some conversations with council over where we started and where we're at right now. Good news, as I was looking through the revenues earlier today, comparing March, April collections to same time last year and the year before and the year before that. I looked at four-year increments. The two items that we are short on or are seeing decreases that we expected, the meals tax and sales tax, or meals tax and lodging tax. The meals tax is, we're still on track to meet the budget. We're not on track to meet where we were hoping to be. We're not going to be over $1 million, but we're going to be able to hit the $940,000 in meals tax. The lodging tax, when it's a $30,000 total revenue, losing $5,000 it's only $5,000, but it's still 16% of that revenue budget. The interesting news is the sales tax continues to trend higher, and I don't know if it's people just going out and hitting the grocery stores early, and maybe our May and June collections will be down. But the interesting thing with March and April, both were significantly higher than the same time last year, previous years. So
It's because you're collecting taxes on sales tax on internet sales, and more internet sellers are finally becoming compliant and paying that tax to the state of Virginia, which then they spread back out amongst the communities.
I'm sure that's
So as internet sales take off, we'll see that money come in more and more. Before it was really just Amazon and Walmart, because they had places here in Virginia. Now everybody has to do it.
it's good for us because what we were worried about decreasing, at least for now, doesn't look like it's going to be as big of a decrease. Now we have in your packet and on the website the draft budget, $8.8 million, plus or minus, or just a little bit more than $8.8 million. That also includes what we're calling the budget set aside, those 5 positions in community development, police, fire, general properties, and vehicle maintenance, as well as the lion's share of our proposed capital improvements for the general fund. That's about $438,000. If that needs to be pulled, that could be right at a 5%, equal to a 5% cut if we needed to. We are proposing to fully fund the water and sewer capital programs, at least largely because the water and sewer funds haven't been affected by the COVID as much. It just completely left me.
We essentially have a very conservative budget with a 5% buffer.
More.
Should we need it.
Yes, sir.
I've got one question about this proposed budget. Am I correct in assuming that you're absorbing the funds that we're no longer paying for the James Hardy debt service into
It is
here?
our budget. Yes, sir. That is part of the hole filler, the gap filler.
So the challenge I'll post for everybody, and it's not one that we do currently, but this summer when we come back to it, or at the latest by the time we're doing the fiscal budget for 2022, we need to make sure that cash is freed up to put either into reserves or to put towards the new emergency services complex. That was a good chunk of the money that we were going to use for that project to cover the debt service. And by absorbing it, we've now created a bigger hole for ourselves to fill. Given the current situation, not in so many unknowns, it makes sense to absorb it. But it has to be agreed that it's a temporary thing, and we're not then searching for that money next year going, where to go?
I agree. I think our first responsibility is to get our reserves to the 15 to 20% range as recommended by our accounting firm.
And our reserves have to be a priority moving forward, as Mr. Penn so well put the last time.
I know it's already been stated, but I just think it's important before we move forward to restate and continue to restate to the public that we intend on coming back to that budget.
Yes.
There is no part of the budget that we are comfortable with without moving forward with further decisions at its current state. And that it is not finalized. It will be approved in order to get a budget on the books, and then we will immediately go to work to finish the final actions necessary to move forward the way that we need to.
Yeah, I call this our bookmark budget.
It's really because the state has set a deadline when this budget has to be done by, and if we don't have a budget by that date, then we can't pay our bills, we can't even pay our staff. So we have to have something, and hopefully come summer we'll have better numbers on everything.
One thing says, I said last month, it's not a perfect budget, but Councilman Dawson spoke as well. If you take a look at the counties and towns around us, fellas, this council and the staff needs to be commended for what we're doing to citizens of town. There's a lot of places that's facing huge staff cuts as we talk right now. Addington, I think, Mr. Dawson, it's down to 75. Roanoke City, they don't know how many they're going to lose. And everybody's fair game. But we're going to be good. It's not perfect, but it comes from last several years of this council. This council right here tightening up the belts. People don't think we do, but this budget is living proof. We got more work to do. I'll grant you that. But I'm proud of this budget tonight. We go ahead and pass it. Let's get a foundation for our employees, our citizens. We're going to keep everything going forward. And we got a good budget. No tax increase. That speaks volume right there for what this council's done. I wouldn't want to be sitting in the seat our brothers and sisters around us. They're facing huge mountains right now. So, Mr. Mayor, I commend everybody sitting up here and staff for a great job. We got work to do. Mr. Dawson and I, we talked. He's got concerns, and those can come. Mr. Goodman, Dees, Mr. Penn, Clements, Mayor, we'll get it done. I'm proud of what we've done this fall.
What's our deadline for having to approve the budget?
I'm sorry,
What's the deadline for having?
June 30th at the latest. But right now, the only 2 meetings we have scheduled for the rest of the fiscal year is tonight and our June 2nd council meeting.
The other thing that makes it more complicated, and why we talk about this in May and not June, is all the public notification requirements. And so if we tweak the budget and it ends up higher than what we had proposed, then we have to go through all the public notifications and hearings again. If we cut it more, we're okay. And that was the concern. Making sure we meet FOIA as required.
I just have, I'm a little bit leery about, we don't know what's gonna be coming down the pipe from the state. This can be some real big cuts if we have to absorb one way or the other, I don't know.
The good news with state funding, we get 2 pots of funding from the state. One is for streets and one is for police. The street funds, the maintenance funds, come from gas tax. And I was, after a conversation with Mr. Dawson, did some research and talked to some folks. The last thing to cut when the gas tax revenues go down is the maintenance funds. So what we get in street funds, they would have to cut construction funds and grants and everything else. And then if they still need to cut, they'd have to cut us. So we're pretty buffered on the VDOT side. The police funding has been the same amount for 15 years, maybe. And it's about a tenth of what the compensation board pays for sheriffs. In theory, it was supposed to be equal. So I'm pretty confident that won't be cut, won't be affected. We get a lot of funds from just local taxes. That's really the biggest hit for us. As long as we can get businesses back into operation and get back to the growth that we were enjoying back in January, February timeframe, I think we'll be pretty safe. But I do need to completely agree, this is only a bookmark budget. We definitely have a lot of conversations to be had in the coming months.
And hopefully we'll have a clearer picture when those conversations start as to where we are and where we're headed, so. All right. Nothing further, I will go ahead and open the public hearing for the proposed budget for fiscal year 2020-2021, with understanding that, again, that comments are available on the town's website up through May the 22nd. And with that, I will close that public hearing.
You know that,
I knocked the quarter right out of it. All right, we don't have any members of the public here tonight to be able to do public comments in the room, so we will move on to item 10, the consent agenda. You've had a chance to review the minutes from April 7th, 2020 council meeting and the April 21st, 2020 council budget work session. I would accept a motion to.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt the minutes as proposed in the consent agenda.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thanks, gentlemen. We will move to item 11, the project summary sheet.
I will just open up for questions. Council has the most recent project summary sheet in your packet. Be glad to at least start that way and see where the conversation goes.
I would like to start with the Door Highway Convenience Center.
Yes, sir.
There's a mention in the next steps of a potential needing a subdivision plat.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something we could start immediately?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So we actually have surveyors on on retainer, basically, in essence. And the property that we're looking at is also connected with the 4B pump station and the current drop site. It's all one big, large parcel. The county will want to, if they, I guess the agreement 10 years ago was for the town to own it and the PSA to operate it. So we'll have some type of operations agreement, but we'll need actual boundaries. So that's why we need to do the survey. But we can go ahead and certainly get that started. We'll have that one done before the brownfield, the environmental portion's complete.
What time frame do you anticipate on the environmental portion? I know that can be lengthy.
It could be 90 days or so.
One question I had from the public was, what are the plans for the old drop site when we switch over? Is there a plan perhaps to turn that into parking for the trail, or?
I think that would be the best use. Remove the fence, beautify it a little bit, clean it up, put some landscaping, and have that as you know, if you wanted to do a trail from there to the train station and back, or from the train station to there and back, or something.
That would be a good spot right there at the low level.
Sure.
It's nice.
Would that cause any issues with our parking probably being free and right near the trailhead where they charge for it?
You know, it hasn't been an issue yet, and our parking at the train station has been free. I don't know, moving it 2 miles closer or a mile closer would be a big issue, but
And I see people park at Heritage Park and riding too, so.
I guess we'll wait and see if the state park brings that to our attention. I think we should go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
Be the best use for it.
What's the deadline for the downtown revitalization grant?
The original deadline was October. We've already been told that they're going to extend that out. We don't know how long yet.
I believe, from what I've heard from DHCD, is December 31st on their grants.
You know, we're still in October mindset, though. We still want to get this moving forward.
And on that subject, another question I got from someone in the public was the status of the Pocket Park.
So the status of the Pocket Park, we were shooting for the third weekend in May. They're a little bit behind, so we're assuming the last part of May they'll be completed. With that project is coming along pretty rapidly. Facade agreements, we finished up the contract agreements with Spencer, with the town attorney, so we should see the facades moving forward also very shortly.
I have a question for the Park Park. Actually, it snaps me now that Mr. Goodman brought that up. The wall, once this thing's completed, I noticed one of the walls, is it on schedule to be scraped and something be put on? We're not legal, are we?
So that property owner has not agreed to participate in the facade program, so we are looking at using some funding to either scrape it or pressure wash it and do that as part of the beautification process with the blight elimination.
Sounds like a project for the inmates.
You never know, we might need some volunteer help on that.
I think you probably got enough people up here, right?
Be first.
If we can just get an update on the treatment, water treatment plant.
Later tonight, you'll approve the funding, but they've done the demo work. The equipment is on order, and Mr. Pettigo's on the phone call. I want to say that was it's still another month and a half, 2 month lead time. It was about a 3 month lead time total for the equipment. So it may be later on in the summer, midsummer, before it's actually completed. But all the preparation work, the demo work, is all.
Sounds like more like fall.
Could be. It's not, once it gets here, it's only about a 3-week construction process. It's just a matter of getting the equipment constructed and shipped.
And in the plan, once it's online and we know it's safe to use, we're gonna take each of the others off in stages and inspect them to see where we're at.
That'll be part of the future CIPs. Yeah, we want to do one a year. I think we can afford. We've shown that we can operate on 3 filter beds as long as the new one is as efficient, if not more efficient, than what we have. That's the plan, is to go ahead and look at the other 3. And this project actually sets the filter plan up to provide for more backwashing capabilities, a better backwashing system than what we had before. So we should have a better operating water plant when we get this done too.
I had one other question regarding the boundary adjustment study. I know Tischler Bice is updating the 2011 study. I was wondering what the time frame was on that, because in conjunction, it mentions a draft agreement with the county. We start start putting that together. I'm just trying to figure out how those are gonna coincide, how far out that study is.
The Tischler Bice portion is complete. They actually presented their portion to the Board of Supervisors March, I want to say March meeting. It was supposed to be in the February meeting. It ended up being the March. It was the March because he had to do a conference call. He couldn't drive. The next, what I'm working with Mr. Sweet is to put together a list of items that would go into an agreement. What does the county expect, if anything? You know, what would we need to acquire from the county or take over or whatever? So that in the timeline from the attorneys, we had a goal of getting that agreement at least drafted out in rough form by late June, early July, and then start forming the legal documents that would go back in front of each council and the board and go to the state, so later in the fall. We're still, I think it was October of next year for final review, so.
Thank you.
Okay, no one else? Okay, we will move on to item 13B. Oh, 13B, sorry, I'm ahead of myself, saw a check mark. Item 12A, resolution 2020-11, authorizing issuance of a general obligation bond.
I do want to say just a few things. I would remind you, we had a public hearing on this back in January, and if I'm good at reading council members' desires and facial expressions, I assumed that we needed to come up with a better rate and a better loan package. So I went back to the drawing board and talked to some banks, and the best, we were able to negotiate a much better deal. What I think is a much better deal with National Bank rather than Live Oak Bank. You have in your packet a copy of the proposed term sheet for the $290,000 bond. It is a 15-year bond as the Live Oak Bank was. Live Oak was a fixed rate at 5.13, I think, percent. This one is a much lower, but it's an adjustable rate on 5-year terms. 3.9% to start, would go up at no more than 1% each 5 years. Our goal or expectation is to have this paid off before the first 5 years is up. You'll remember one of the other things about the Live Oak Bank financing was there was no allowance for early payments before year 10. This one, we can get the bond today and pay it off in August if we wanted to. There's no penalty for prepayment. So talking with the bond council, the public hearing that you held earlier this year still complies with the requirements. If council chooses to move forward with resolution 2020-11 tonight, then we can probably close in a matter of days, week to 10 days, and get the revenue side behind us. We've spent just over $100,000 toward that'll be reimbursed. So we, help fill the coffers back, and then we know we've got everything else ready for the final construction portion. Glad to answer any questions.
You did a great job reading this council, because I think nobody likes the terms that were originally brought forward. So this is definitely much better. I know the idea of an adjustable rate and everything else is a little scary, but like you said, we're going to budget to make this paid for before that first possible increase. The other great thing about this is we're also partnering with a local bank, a local business, and that's a relationship that we've been nurturing for years. So I think it's good to continue to work with National Bank as much as we can.
I think long term, maybe we could use this process to maybe reconsider maybe how we go about moving forward with loan processes in the future. possibly, I understand, we've, in past used services that we had to pay for to provide us with that information. And it seems in this situation, you were able to basically pursue the needed information and the needed to get a better rate without paying somebody else any money.
Find it for me, right?
And so there's so many wins in maybe us handling it this way in the future.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt resolution 2020-11 as written.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, any other discussion? If you would call the roll, Ms. Ayer?
Yes, sir. Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mr. Dawson?
Aye.
Mr. East?
Aye.
Mr. Goodman?
Aye.
Mr. Klontz?
Aye.
And Mr. Ratcliffe?
Aye.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to item 12B, a performance agreement on Project Cal.
This was an item that I had assumed I had put in front of council on the open session and approved several months back, but come to find out I did not. So, just as a reminder, Project Cal is the announced expansion project at Calfee Park. Is since, due to the COVID issues, has been put on hold for this season, but that timing doesn't necessarily affect what's in the performance agreement because we had some buffer time built in already. This performance agreement documents a tax grant equal to the real estate taxes that they would pay for 3 years. Actually, for 6 years. The first 3 years would be 100% of the increase, and the next 3 years would be 50%. I'll remind you, is when the town owned the park, we never got real estate taxes from that anyway. Now we're getting quite a bit from mills tax and other tourism-related revenues. So I think we're still ahead of the game. But what this does is it documents that there would be maintaining at least 75 jobs, making a capital investment of at least $3 million in addition to what they've already done. I will also note that this is a replica of the document that the county and the county EDA adopted for the county portion of the agreement.
And that would be $3 million by December 31st of 2025.
Yes.
Is that period?
So the request or the recommendation would be to authorize town manager to execute the performance agreement on the town's behalf.
What's the proper business name in here, so it's not like.
A performance agreement with Historic Calfee Park LLC.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. If you would call the roll, Ms. Ayer?
Yes, sir. Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mr. Dawson?
Aye.
Mr. East?
Aye.
Mr. Goodman?
Aye.
Mr. Klontz?
Aye.
Mr. Ratcliffe?
Aye.
All right, that will move us to item 13. We are skipping item 13A.
I would recommend tabling item 13A until the June 2nd council meeting.
Since that's on the agenda, Mr. Mayor, I move that we table that until the June
2nd.
June 2nd council meeting.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. If you would call the roll, Ms. Ayer?
Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mr. Dawson?
Aye.
Mr. East?
Aye.
Mr. Goodman?
Aye.
Mr. Klontz?
Aye.
Mr. Ratcliffe?
Aye.
That will move us to item 13B, a report on the April 12th and 13th flooding event.
I'm going to ask Chief Kaiser to unmute and to give us a presentation, an update, and let me turn up the TV.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right. So after, let me, I can't hear that. So after the flood on April 13th, of course it was a quick flood, as everybody knows, about a 6-hour event, but it did a lot of damage. BDM, we reached out to BDM, they came in the next day with our assessment guys. Town manager, myself, and a couple other folks from the county. went around and they got assessment tools, as you see in your memo, to assess all the damage. We had 47 total structures that were affected. They rate their damage assessment from affected to minor, major, and destroyed being the worst. The town had 22 commercial structures that were affected. Most of those, all 22 were either affected, some were minor. There was nothing major destroyed on commercially. There was 25 residential structures. That was between the town and the county. 2 of those were destroyed. Both of those were in the Brookmont Road area. He didn't break it down to how many was in town limits, the county on that, but there was 25 total. Let's see, that was on our assessment tools. That was a value of about $176,000 for the residential. There's $101,000 damage to the commercial side. Then, as you see also on your memo, the town areas, which we are trying to reach some assistance with through VDM. We've already applied. I'm in the process working with them now. Our main areas here were the Dora walking trail, $18,524. It took a pretty good hit. The Gatewood Dam access road, the road going back to the dam, it washed out quite bad. Lautier Street washed out. Repairs on it was $5,800. South Washington Avenue. The tree removal from the creek and the trails, which they will reimburse us for that. And then the pump station took a pretty good hit also. Total repairs, which we do have estimated at this time, they were trying to get assistance with, is $49,930, 2 cents. We'll see. I reached out to them today. She said she had some questions. She's gonna get back with me next week on how some of our costs and how we got some of those costs and estimates. And when she gets back, I'll let y'all know further. But we're trying. We'll see what happens. Took a pretty good hit. Of course, I know a lot of y'all seen the storm, but that storm was kind of weird storm. All the gauges in town that were the town monitors, the rain gauges at the filter plant on Randolph Avenue, there was only 2.5 inches of rain. A lot of locals only had 2.5 inches of rain, like in Lautier Bottom. But the reports we got, it was like 5.5 inches of rain up Mill Street, which is where all the water comes from. That was not officially from the Weather Service. That was from the locals that I did some research on. So it was a sudden burst of water that the creeks come up really quick, and of course it crested higher, I think 4 inches higher in April than it did back in 2010. So it's a pretty good hit. Good thing about flash flooding, went down just as quick as they come up, but it is damage. Y'all got any questions?
I got a question for you. Or it's maybe the town manager. Also, the estimates that you just give, that doesn't have any man hours. That has man hours to it.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, and thankfully I got with Kim from Public Works, and she did a great job. FEMA has their own rates VDM uses FEMA rates for equipment and man hours and material for all the rock. We'll have to get a lot of shot rock for the road, especially going to Gatewood Dam for all the drainages, for all the crossings, the culvert pipes, and then the Dora Highway Trail, a lot of the finer rock to walk on. But yes, and asphalt also, like Lautier Bottom, that does pay for asphalt. But yes, man hours, equipment hours, material, and they pay for it. They even detail down to like equipment hours, breaking down to chainsaw hours. Every piece of equipment has its own rate.
Real quick, I want to commend the department heads. When we have an incident like this, whether it's tornado, floods, whatever, and staff, we're already short, commend the chief of police and fire chief, the finance director, and Sean on a job well done. Because what a lot of people don't understand is the town still opens up. even though our staff is down here trying to keep people from washing down the creek, we had one that did it. Finance department's still open, our street guys are still mowing regardless. When this thing, and a lot of people don't understand that, you guys block off roads shorthanded. The finance department's, but everything from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock, the town still operates. And they did a great job.
Public Works too, you know.
You
They
know,
had their hands full.
you can't say enough about Public Works, and, I was out early, I went on Kersey Bottom at 5:30, 6 o'clock, the water was not up to, where it was, and the time I got from Kersey Bottom to, Wilco's, that road was already underwater, and I just drove through there. That's how quick it come up. So it was a very dangerous flood, but, yeah, staff, everybody done a great job. I know because I was out there with you. I commend you because the town still operates, even though they're swelled up in this stuff right here. Y'all still operate in your office just like nothing happened. So it's a good job.
It was definitely a team effort from all departments,
Yep.
Town and county also. Absolutely. And it was like you said, a sudden rush of water that nobody was prepared for, no warning, and it just come out of nowhere.
And I did see, to Chief Road Chair, can you hear me? There was a lot of Dodge stalled in water. A lot of Dodge, it was either logs washing or a lot of Dodge stalled in water. Dodge cars were stalled in water, or logs or something, I don't know what it was. But that's what was blocking the water, that old Dodge is blocking.
He heard that.
Yeah, the last one that ended up stuck in the water was Ford.
So,
Oh, my.
let me echo Mr. Radcliffe's compliments to our staff. On top of dealing with a major flood in portions of town, that same day you had Public Works fixing a water line burst over on East Main Street. So, you know, our guys were working really hard, and they should be commended for their efforts. Now, in regards to everything else, I've been down talking with some of the property owners, some of the business owners, and so forth, and it looks like because of this flood, we're losing at least one business so far. But I think what we've done is we've overlooked some areas and some issues. One of the questions I'm hearing a lot from citizens of the town and the business owners is, when is the Army Corps of Engineers going to come fix the creek? And this is after I tell them that the town can't fix the creek. We can't go into the creek with equipment because the Army Corps of Engineers has the jurisdiction. I know that it is a long process to get on their to-do list, and then even longer for them to get the funding to do it. But I think it would be good if we can have a discussion on that. Doesn't necessarily need to be tonight, but really talk deep about what's going on with the Corps, kind of get a schedule, an idea. If it's a funding issue, we have a congressman, we can call him and see if he can kind of fight to try to get that. But 2 major floods in 10 years, some people would say, oh, that's not too bad. But there are homes being lost, there are businesses and citizens being displaced, and I think we've got to push it a little bit further.
Sean, what are the guidelines regarding the creek beds? I've heard mixed stories, and so what is it actually?
I've probably heard the same mixed stories that you have, but it's from my understanding with the Army Corps themselves, you have to determine where the quote-unquote normal water line is, and you can cut down to that normal water line. So if the normal water line out behind us is 1.5 foot deep water, we can cut grass down to that, or we can remove dirt down to that, but we can't go below the normal water line.
So with that being the case, if you look at, because Mr. Goodman raises a good point, if you look at around Bell Avenue, and Chief, please chime in if you feel like it, but if you look around Bell Avenue and in that area behind Hodge Insurance and the Wilco or the Speedway, there's a lot of little islands, if you will, a lot of foliage. It seems to me, given where the water level is, there's no reason that we couldn't, using those guidelines, we couldn't go in there and take a lot of that out.
issue there is what you would be doing if you think about hydraulically. It's really flat back in there, so there aren't very many opportunities for slowing the water down or getting the water out quicker. Is what you want to do. You don't want to slow it down. You want to get it out quicker. But the channel itself flattens out through the Honeywell,
Right.
to where it's more or less sitting once track fork or spools run start feeding in heavily, and that really is the bigger issue. One thing, and I'll go back on the Army Corps side. You'll remember here probably close to a year ago, I guess, we had the group called the Silver Jackets. They came. Well, it was late last year. They came in their first phase and did some public input stuff and did some studies on specific buildings. We are in their next phase of funding options, if Mr. Petty goes on the Zoom, he can chime in. But the next phase was going to be, we need to document and get a GIS setup of the stormwater system so we can understand where the water's coming from. And the other goal was to figure out something upstream from Peak Creek, west of town, that we could build basically a storage area for when the creek gets up to a certain level, it starts feeding into this storage area rather than continuing down the town, so it would slow that part down.
So like a storage, like a retention pond?
Yeah, pretty much. Now you're talking, several acres that would be needed for that, but that was one of the results, one of the recommendations of their engineers when they came through. They did tell us that that's a couple years down, because you have a year to do the study, you have a year or two to do the design work and the acquisition, and we're probably talking about a 10-year project, but it would be something that in essence we could still hang our hat on saying we're trying, but it's, you think about the federal government, it's a slow ship to turn. Mr. Goodman brings up the two large flooding events over the last decade. One of my previous jobs, I did the flood mitigation for the town, and we've had, including those two, we've had 19 in the last 90 years. So, we've had more than our fair share of quote-unquote 100-year floods. It's just a matter of I think we're probably getting to the point where FEMA and the Army Corps of Engineers, we're getting their attention and realizing we need more help than what the town itself can do.
So to me, it seems that we could approach this in a parallel path. We have what I would refer to as the low-hanging fruit, which would allow us to go in and mitigate some of the obstacles or obstructions ourselves to help speed the water through, as you put it. And then the second, which is the long-term path, is to start the process with the Corps of Engineers and the long-term mitigation plan with the retention ponds and what have you. Is that, in your mind, is that a reasonable approach?
I think yes. I think what we need to do is to be very deliberate on what we try and remove obstacle-wise, what we can or what we should or shouldn't, can or can't remove. If it may not make as much sense to do a lot of work behind the Honeywell, the Wilco area, as maybe further down to speed the water up, pulling it out quicker, or slowing it down upstream. But from what I remember from the Army Corps' visits, just the topography in that general area is terrible for doing any kind of projects other than figuring out how to get the water out quicker. And when you have the lake, elevation-wise, 8 feet below where Peak Creek is, I think it's about 8 or 9 foot drop between here and Claytor Lake. It's not much fall to get the water out. So that's the issue that we've got to figure out.
So, I just wanted to follow back up on Bell Avenue, because those businesses seem to take probably the largest hit from the business side. In looking at the bank and looking at the road itself, one thing I noticed is there's a large pipe, stormwater pipe, that, you know, collects right at the end of Bell Avenue and dumps into the creek. My concern though is if the bank is a little bit higher, do we have water backing up that pipe and filling up a little lake at Bell Avenue? So we may need to see if that's the best approach for getting the water out of there. The other piece that I've been asked about, and probably not a bad idea, is there are some areas where we could sort of build dikes along the creek to prevent the water from flowing up into that area. I know that means the water is going to go further down, so we have to see if that creates more problems than it helps. And of course, the other thing that we've got to be careful of when we talk about getting into Pea Creek and so forth, especially around Honeywell, is the doodle dust remnants that are in the banks. We can't disturb that, otherwise we'll have the EPA back here on another problem. But I do want us to spend some time really seeing what we can do to self-help this and move it along, instead of just waiting for the Army Corps of Engineers to finally come and say, hey, we're ready to get started. You know, it's just too much of a problem. And you said 19 to 90 years?
Yes, sir.
So that's about every 5 years.
On average.
On average, we have this. And if it's a 100-year flood every 5 years, it's a 5-year flood. And that means it's a serious problem that we need to really address.
So how soon could you come back to council with recommendations from a short-term, more immediate approach, and then of course, the long-term approach?
We'll do all the research we can and try and have a report at the June 2nd meeting.
I would like to see something that's actionable.
And one other item here is, it's great that VDEM is willing to help us as a town, our budget issues that we're going to be hit with this. But I think we need to make a more concerted effort to reach out to the governor with the county and get him to declare that emergency, so some of those folks will have access to funds as well. And it's kind of disappointing. We can get the money, but we have other ways of getting it, whereas the citizens and the businesses that are affected, they can't raise taxes or do anything else to try to get that fund. So it'd be really good for us to remind the governor that there are things going on in Virginia other than COVID-19.
One thing, Mr. Man, have you ever heard anything about NW yet? NW Railroad?
For the trestle?
An engineer or anything? So, but you did send a letter, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
If we don't soon hear something, we probably need to get hold to our delegate. Of course, fighting NW is like fighting the government. But for the council members that don't really know, is you also got a natural dam with the trussel. A trussel set down there, the ones that hadn't seen it, the Friends Peak Creek with Ron Hall and Kathy Hanks, and we've all seen this. The trussel set here in the water, all this water comes around the bend, it's just two huge pipes. It's all under this trussel. The one pipe over on the left-hand side plugs up immediately with the wood and stuff. So all the water coming down now is trying to go through one pipe, what don't goes over the trussel. So you have a huge dam right there, regardless. And I was told by one of the guys that retired, NW will look at that in a flood plan because we're at and possibly redesign so the pipes an open concrete under it so nothing flows up. But if you guys ever get a chance to go down there and see that, I think, Mary, you've seen it, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. And it is a huge dam. It's a huge, actually behind the sheriff's department. You can't go down into W no more, they blocked it off. You used to be able to ride right to it, but if you go in behind the sheriff's department where the dump is, and you can walk over to the fence, you'll see the truss from the bridge. And all it is two flood pipes. And that one, I just about bet you right now it's plugged up. It's plugged. And then so it forces all the water into the right pipe, which is not big enough to do it, and then it just goes over so it's a huge dam there. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing that really hurts us now. Mr. Utt sent a letter to NW to get an engineer in here to talk to it. Yeah, he's had strike. And if we don't soon hear back, then we probably should get a hold to either one of our delegates or a senator, because as Mr. Goodman and Mr. E says, we're buying time here, and we almost bought it last time. Our business cannot keep affording water. I think Hodge, a lot of damage in there. Greg, you had damage in down there. It's been going on a long time. I don't know the answer. All we can do is, like I said, is reach out to Corey. We can't wait on that.
You know, Sean mentioned the fact that there's not any drop going towards Peak Creek, but on the morning of the 13th, if you rode up on the street above Cool Springs, you couldn't get down north.
Absolutely.
Down on Cool Springs, you could look all the way over to Total Car Care, and it was just a flat sheet of water. It was a lake. That whole area through there, I mean, 2 feet of water covered it completely.
Do you
One
think
side
that
to the
truss
other.
is pushing it out?
Oh, I'm sure it does.
I have to agree with you on that because if any of y'all get a chance, I can take you down there and show you, but it'd be better if we had somebody from Indiana.
Norfolk Southern, yeah. I'll reach out again.
Sure.
Let's see if we can try to do like a little field trip before or after a meeting maybe, where we all can go down and see this. 'Cause I just pulled it up on Google Maps as you saw, and that does look like a pretty serious issue.
You can, the town owns of course, where the brush site is. I think you can walk behind it and stay on town property, not on Honeywell or Norfolk Southern, to be able to at least see the trestle he's talking about. You won't be able to see the obstructions in it, but you can at least get your eyes on it.
Sounds like we have 3 parallel paths. We have the more immediate stuff, Norfolk Southern and the Corps of Engineers.
All right. Well, Sean, I think you have your orders on that. We will go from there to item 13C, Virginia Outdoors Foundation request.
You have in your packet a map that I want to bring to your attention. The Virginia Outdoors Foundation, they are the state organization that covers conservation easements and land and historic property conservation efforts throughout the Commonwealth. They have developed a new program. Before, they would only consider doing a conservation easement on 100 acres or more, unless it had quote-unquote significant historic value. Well, they've redefined what that significant historic value is, and Calfee School, of course, it meets that, as does the T.G. Howard Community Center. You'll see on the map that there's an interesting green block of property that the town of Pulaski owns that I didn't know about. It's at the corner of Altoona and Magnox, West Main, whatever the depends on which resource you look at and what the name is. It has 0 value to the town. It sits below the road. It is the first thing to get flooded when that little creek gets a little bit of water, so it doesn't have value to the town, but it does have value to T.G. Howard Community Center. And I say that because the amount of funding that they would be eligible for is based on the lot coverage. How many acres of land are they looking at? It's a formula. It's that plus a subjective quotient on what the historic value of the building itself is. But I had thought about presenting to council or proposing to council that we consider gifting that property over to the T.G. Howard Community Center. We don't need to do it tonight, of course. We need to do a public hearing, and the T.G. Howard Community Center group, they're working through the legal process to acquire the what's labeled as the Pulaski Christian Citizens League property, which is the actual structure and parking lot, as well as the Mary White Buford Women's Club property, which is the old recreation area, field, and playground. Both of those properties are going through the court process to get the ownership cleared up and get it into the T.G. Howard Community Center's nonprofit ownership. But I would recommend council considering at least scheduling a public hearing for this proposed disposition of the property in, I guess, as a gift or a dollar or whatever you choose to the T.G. Howard Community Center.
Okay, when they have a cookout, we just have to have something to eat. That's all.
Right.
Yeah, I I can still hear Mr. Warburton in the background going, if you don't need the land, get rid of it.
You know, one thought was it does have share a boundary with the Calfee Community Center property, the old Calfee School property, which the Redevelopment Housing Authority owns. One idea would be to gift it to them, but it's on the other side of the creek. It really doesn't have any continuity to the Calfee School unless you wanted to cross the creek to get to it or wade across the creek. So that's why I'm recommending considering the T.G. Howard Community Center property.
I don't have a problem. I think a question for you though, you know, I lived right there on the road right above that, big part of my life. That's the first time I've ever heard that Murray White Buford Women's Club.
That was a group created back in the 50s, from what I can gather, back just before the building, the T.G. Howard, what's known as the T.G. Howard Community Center building was constructed. I don't know the history of who Mary White Buford was, but the ownership dates back that far.
So it was two different, so it used to be a community center, and it was dance hall, it's been everything since I grew up with it. So this was actually two different, the community center and the women's club?
I think the Women's Club was first, and then the Christian Citizens League was created to build the building, and that's at least, you know, I don't know if Mr. Penn has any knowledge of the history, but that's the way it looks like at least in the land records. The Christian League was 60s era, and the Buford Women's Club was 50s.
So what action do you need from us tonight?
I would recommend holding a public hearing at the June 2nd meeting for the disposition of the property. We'll follow through the same public comment items that we did tonight, allowing for written comments and such, but public hearing June 2nd, potential action at the July meeting. It may need to take longer, but because I want to make sure that it's the T.G. Howard Community Center property that we're donating to, not another group. But the public hearing would be the first action item.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we direct staff to schedule a public hearing for the June 2nd meeting regarding the disposition of property in relation to the T.G. Howard Community Center.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, if you would call the roll, Ms. Hare.
Yes, sir. Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mr. Dawson?
Aye.
Mr. East?
Aye.
Mr. Goodman?
Aye.
Mr. Klontz?
Aye.
Mr. Ratcliffe?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, we'll go to item 14. Need a motion to enter into closed session for two items. One item under Virginia Code 2.2-3711A1 concerning discussion, consideration, and interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of any public body regarding an appointment to the Architectural Review Board. And one item under Virginia Code 2.2-3711A3 regarding discussion or consideration of the acquisition of real property for a public purpose or of the disposition of publicly held real property where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body concerning Monte Vista Drive extension right-of-way.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. If you call the roll, Ms. Hare.
Yes, sir. Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mr. Dawson?
Aye.
Mr. East?
Aye.
Mr. Goodman?
Aye.
Mr. Klontz?
Aye.
Mr. Ratcliffe?
Aye.